Hello and welcome or welcome back to the Import-Export Hub channel, everybody. Bogdan here, your host for the next couple of minutes. Thanks for pushing the play button, by the way. I hope everybody is doing great, and without anything else to add here, allow me to cover Mexico's export dynamics for the 2019-2023 interval. More precisely, I will cover Mexico's top 20 headings that had the largest absolute changes, both positive and negative, in 2023 relative to the previous year. While towards the end of the video, I'll cover Mexico's top 20 headings that had the smallest coefficient of variation for this 5 years interval, in an attempt to show you where Mexico's competitive advantage resides, but more on this later. So guys, first things first, I will start with the headings that had the largest absolute positive changes, and as we can see here, heading 8703 had the largest change, some $10.4 billion, which is a 22% increase relative to the previous year, bringing the overall export figure to some $57.3 billion. Then we see another auto-related heading. This time we're talking about the motor vehicles for the transport of goods. So heading 8704, who saw a $4.9 billion positive change, coupled with an impressive 7.3% compound annual growth rate for the last 5 years, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. The third spot we see here finishing the podium, let's say we see heading 8708, so parts and accessories for tractors and motor vehicles, who had a $2.5 billion positive change, thus bringing the overall export value to some $40.5 billion, which is the second largest amount in this top 20 list. And then we see, I don't know, electrical transformers and static converters. So heading 8504, tractors follows with a positive change of $1.3 billion. What else do we see? We see smartphones, for example. So heading 8517, air conditioning machines is also present. So heading 8415. Then we see copper ores and concentrates, heading 2603. Parts of aircraft and spacecraft follows, and towards the end of the list we see, I don't know, gas, liquid or electricity supply of production meters. Silver is on the 19th spot, and finishing this list is electric accumulators, so heading 8507, who had a $398 million positive change and some $2.5 billion overall exports in 2023. So guys, what insights can we draw based on this preliminary information? Well, it's pretty obvious that the auto and the electronics sector are pretty important in Mexico's exports. Heading 85, for example, has 6 headings in this top 20 list. It's a big cluster, even though in terms of cumulative exports is just a third relative to the auto one. And my educated guess is telling me that there is still room for improvement, especially given the current geopolitical context. The auto sector, as I've said, is also pretty important. I dare to say that it's the most important one for Mexico. And the cumulative exports for these 5 headings are around $153 billion. And for these two, there is still room for growing, while the other chapters are only at the beginning of this nearshoring strategy, as in the case for, I don't know, Chapter 88, for example, so parts of aircraft and spacecraft. Another insight we could draw is related to the small prevalence of commodity-related headings in this top 20 list. So added value resulting from manufacturing or assembly is creating a positive vector, let's say, for the Mexican economy, contributing to the overall well-being of people because of this spillover effect on the local economy, as I said earlier. Now, relative to the compound annual growth rate for the last 5 years, we see only positive numbers, not exceptionally high, but given the values involved here, the absolute numbers resulting from this growth are not at all negligible, at least from an export figure point of view. So guys, these were Mexico's largest absolute positive changes, and now I'll move to the negative side of things. As we can see here, automatic data processing machines, PCs and laptops mostly had the largest contraction in 2023, some $13.6 billion. Petroleum oil is next with $4 billion negative change, while on the third spot we see heading 8528, so monitors and projectors with almost $1.9 billion contraction, and the list goes on with, I don't know, dates, figs, pineapples, avocados, and the like, so heading 0804, who had a contraction around $280 million. Furniture and parts thereof is also present here. Then, I don't know, we see flat rolled products of iron or non-alloy steel. Polyacetals is next with a contraction of what, $305 million. While towards the end of the list we see copper bars and rods of iron or non-alloy steel, while lasers, so heading 9013, ends this top 20 list with a contraction close to $269 million. And again, following the example from the previous list, I will try to extract some insights from this information. And the first thing that strikes me is the number of commodity-related headings, especially petroleum and flat-rolled products of iron or non-alloy steel, who are inherently volatile, so not necessarily worrying in the overall export performance. And another thing that I want to point out is the relative flat growth in what concerns the avocado exports, as it seems that competition from other South American countries is eroding Mexico's growth potential, especially on the US market. As for the large negative compound annual growth rates for the last 5 years, we are witnessing some big contractions relative to automatic data processing machines with the final assembly done in Mexico, so heading 8471, and the same goes true for heading 9013, who in 2023 managed to export a fraction of the figure exported in 2019. But even though we see these contractions, Mexico's attractiveness, let's say, is not diminishing. On the contrary, I could say, especially in these uncertain times characterized by trade frictions and high levels of uncertainty. Anyways, it's worth following up Mexico's trajectory for the next couple of years. Until then, guys, let's see a couple of exports who had the smallest variability, at least from a value point of view for the last 5 years. And as we can see here, hand saws, so heading 8202, had the smallest coefficient of variation, 0.0399. Gold followed, while on the third spot we see pickling preparations, so heading 3810 with a coefficient of variation of 0.0438. And the list goes on with bananas, organosulfur compounds, blankets, and traveling rugs, inorganic or mineral coloring matter, so heading 32 0.06 is also present here, whilst towards the end of the list we see pencils, crayons and the like with a coefficient of variation of 0.0591. Vegetables is on the 19th spot with a coefficient of variation of 0.0596 and $3.15 billion worth of exports in 2023, which is the second largest amount in this list, while fuses heading 3603 ends this top 20 list with a coefficient of variation of 0.0617 and some $85 million worth of exports. So guys, what does this information gives us? Well, firstly, if we exclude gold, there are not other commodity related headings, meaning that the manufacturing and the resulting spillover effects on the Mexican economy are quite important. Secondly, the vegetable sector is the most important one, at least if we consider this top 20 list, and again Mexico's proximity to the United States is a factor contributing to this performance. And thirdly, chapter 84, as we can see here, is counting 3 headings, so we could talk about the pseudo cluster, while the rest of the chapters have just one heading, mostly concerning a specific product, a niche product if you want, and one Mexican manufacturer, one US importer. Otherwise, nothing that caught my attention worth mentioning. So guys, with this last sheet being also covered, my mission for today is over. Thank me by hitting those small vanity buttons, and as usual, until next time, keep your business safe. Thanks.